streamers, you know the deal. Drop wherever you are tuning in from in the comments so I for sure know that this is working. Today is Good Friday, so for those of you who recognize Good Friday, happy Good Friday. In my 4-year-old's eyes, it means a day off of school and getting to play while I work. So, if you hear dinosaurs roaring or all of a sudden Encanto playing, yeah, it's just one of those days. Happy Friday. I am really excited to talk about this topic today because whether or not you are unemployed or you're quitting or you want to quit, all of these tips today can be used proactively, or a lot of them you can actually go back and do after the fact now that you know better. So without any further ado, I am going to bring in my very special guest, no other than the badass herself, Diana Alt. So let me click this button. Hey, good morning.
Hey, how are you?
It's been a fun morning. When my son woke up, we went to the toy section. We got a couple new dinos, and now I get to spend my afternoon with you and all of these wonderful people. So I couldn't be better. What about yourself?
Well, I'm good. Like any day that you can get new dinos is a winning day.
Yeah.
So, especially when you're 4 years old. Is that how old your little one is?
Yeah. So they're very important to him.
So any day that you get dinosaurs or tacos, that's a good day.
That's a good day. Absolutely.
So, for me,
all right, so let's say hello to some people. So we've got Shelly tuning in from Pennsylvania. I will be driving through there in a couple of weeks. We've got John. Good morning, afternoon. You're in Indiana, so it is officially afternoon for you. We've got Tiffany tuning in from San Antonio, Texas. The last time I was in San Antonio, Texas, it was during some festival. I don't remember what festival it was, but all the restaurants only serve margaritas for breakfast, so I support that. We've got Ivana from Mobile, Alabama. We just connected, and the first thing that came to my mind was like Kanye's workout plan, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Anyways, and Phil, Georgia is in the house. Good morning, good afternoon. He's popping in and popping out, but he's HR, so he knows how to quit. All right, so Diana, for those of tuning in who don't necessarily know your background, can you share it?
Yeah, so I am Diana Alt. I am a no BS career growth strategist, which means that I focus holistically on careers with my people. So whether that is figuring out what you want to be when you grow up, executing a job search, or just trying to keep growing in your career, I'm your girl. Most of the people that I work with are mid-career leaders, whether they're sort of an influence leader like product and program managers, or whether they are actually the boss of some people. Managers, directors, VPs, those are my folks, and they are all looking to be more humane at work, to enjoy work more, and to have their life be great because their work is great. So my background is I'm a recovering technologist. I spent 20 years in IT. I've had management roles. I worked in a lot of different positions where I had one leg in tech and one leg in people and process and business. So I bring all that to try to help my people be happier at work. So that's me.
I love that. And with that type of experience, I am sure that you have seen both spectrums of personalities in terms of how people feel comfortable or not so comfortable putting in their notice. And so let's go ahead and dive right into it. So on the post when I scheduled this live, some of the things that I talked about were saving your scope details, downloading your performance evaluations. If it's not proprietary, saving some of those projects so you can show your work, those type of details. What other tips do you have from like an operations type of perspective or like a proactive type of perspective? What things should people do before they even put in a notice?
So one thing that I like to to think about is, since I've had so much heavy,
I meant to put you on the big screen. Hold on.
that's okay. So I've had so much experience working in tech, and a lot of companies have a policy that if they do a layoff or if you give notice and you work in anything where you can touch any data, you're out instantly. So I always recommend to people that they have all the, what was the job description? What was the performance review? What are those things that can support you remembering what awesome stuff that you did? I actually recommend, yes, you want that before you give notice, but it's actually a good idea every few months to go through and make sure that you have all of that stuff available. Because even when your company is doing well, you never know what's going to happen, when your company is going to get acquired, when your boss is suddenly going to be on the outs and you get reorged out, whatever that is. It's just a really good practice. Put it on your calendar to go check that stuff every few months. Another thing I like to do is recommend to people that whatever, we all have fair use with our work computers. Usually, like, you can have a little bit of personal stuff on there, but you want to be ready at a moment's notice if you have any personal objects in an office or you have anything on a device that you can instantly get what you need, because the same reason. What if you are walked out the door through no fault of your own? If you think in those terms, then whenever you actually are ready to leave the way most of us want to leave, which is, I went and found a great new opportunity, or maybe I hit the Powerball, whatever, you're ready to you're ready to make a smooth exit. So.
Oh, see, I was one of those who made myself at home in my office. I replaced their pen holder with my cute pen holder. It was my space. And so, but you bring up a good point, because should you be unexpectedly let go, you got to clean all that stuff out.
And I think it's fine to have all the stuff there. It's just that you need to know that, okay, this is where I got stuff in the file drawers. I have 20 pictures on the wall. You just need to be able to grab it real quick if you have to. It's not that you can't have anything in your office. It's that you just need to be prepared to smoothly leave if you need to. So.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And something that I want to add to all of that is, before you leave, if you know you are going to leave, hopefully you have been keeping up consistently with your information when it comes to what your scope is, what your metrics are, any of that performance evaluation type of information. But if you know you are going to leave, also be a giver. Like, if you know you're going to start looking, start writing those LinkedIn recommendations, take those, coworkers that you really enjoy to coffee or lunch, just have some of those last moments. So that way you can leave on a good note. Because one of the things about preparing to leave is, for many of us, it's an incredibly emotional time, because we're so invested in our work. I know when I left one of my organizations, I got in the car and I started bawling. They were my family, but it was the right thing to do for me. And in another time, I still have an old boss who still invites me to lunch, to coworker lunches, because she's like, you're still a part of the team. We still love you, even though you left. And so doing those things to proactively be a giver is going to make it so that years down the road, when you want to follow back up with them, those little things are remembered, and it's not too late. Maybe you didn't proactively do it, but you can do it now. Even if you've left, even if you've been let go, you can follow up and give to all of those people that you cared so much about. So what is your take on all of that?
My take on that is completely right. And one thing that sometimes happens is there's all kinds of circumstances when people leave. And there's the practical aspects of leaving, which is, you got to give your computer back, and when is my last paycheck, and how do I sign up for Cobra, and all of that kind of stuff. But the emotional aspects of leaving are what trip people up the most. And in some cases, I've been in the situation where the reason I was choosing to leave is because I had just become burned out, or there was some sort of, I've had the toxic team that I've worked with. And when you leave from that situation, sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, I just don't ever want to see any of these people ever again. You feel that way for a minute until you get the chance to decompress.
Yeah.
But what I have seen happen, I've had this happen earlier in my career with myself when I left a job that was just had become not so good for me. And I've talked to a lot of clients about this. That happens, and then they will assume for years and years after that because it was hard the day that they left, that they have blown the relationship forever. And I mean to tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I've decided to reach back out to somebody that I worked with, maybe even somebody that I was not BFFs at the office with, and found out the reason that it was a little weird is because they wanted to leave too, or because they were unhappy too, or they understood things even if it sucked in the moment because suddenly they were going to have to pick up part of your work. So
Yeah.
don't give up on that is a great message, Tegan.
Absolutely. And like, what's the worst that can happen? So they don't respond to you?
Right.
Like, okay, sure, whatever.
Sure.
You keep
Like,
it moving.
yeah.
So Fatty had a great point about I would bring a basket of fruits to leave with good vibes. So when my next company calls for a reference, they put in a good word for me.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, the worst thing you do, like you blow $50 on fruit and nobody remembers. Like that's literally the worst possible scenario that could happen out of that. So
It is something to keep in consideration though, because, getting that reference for the next job or two jobs after that, when they call, a lot of companies nowadays, they go through work number, right? Like
yeah,
it's, hey, we don't confirm employment here, go through work number or any of the other platforms. And it's just, these were the dates the person was employed. And depending what's legal in your state or country, this is what their wages were. Like it just depends, what the laws are. But basically, yes, this person worked from this date to this date with this title. And I mean, it's like that's it. But sometimes there you are actually picking up the phone, talking to your old boss or somebody's as a recruiter. I know I would have to speak to a referral and say, who else can you provide? Who else can you put me in touch with that can provide a reference for this person? Because any smart candidate is going to have their referral, prepped, ready to go. And sometimes when you're kind of on the fence, like, what might be going on here, you might want to talk to somebody else, and then before you know it, yeah, this person's it's great. And it's sometimes the more random referrals that do an even better job for you. So it's interesting how that kind of plays out sometimes.
yeah, that is for sure too. And I mean, we could do a whole nother day just on the whole references thing. I wrote a post last week about how kind of those informal or backdoor references actually work. That like that's a whole conversation that people don't know. But as far as references and quitting, here's the thing: if you walk out being as kind as you can, that's a win no matter
Yeah.
what. And sometimes that kindness involves a little bit of gritting your teeth, depending on the circumstances you're leaving in. But what I've found is when there's a little bit of space, most of the time, if there has not been malice involved, that people will understand, you know what, this just didn't work anymore. The thing that people worry about so much and talk about so much is I'm afraid of quitting because what if I burn a bridge? Like, and in some cases, it's so bad. They're not even looking for the job to leave the environment that they're desperately unhappy in because they are afraid that they are going to burn a bridge. That
Yeah.
is, can we just say that's messed up? Like, that is messed up. So the most important person to take care of your life is you.
For
And that
sure.
means you need to figure out what is good for you to do. If you are at a stressed breaking point with your job and you're worried about burning a bridge with the people that put you in that stressed breaking point, it's very helpful to get some perspective for that. And I've seen that be sometimes just your best friend smacking you over the head at happy hour. Sometimes it requires a coach. Sometimes it's therapy. I don't care which way you go figure that out. But being afraid to move forward into something better than you because you are afraid to quit is a mistake. So,
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. I mean, a lot of the job seekers I work with are employed, but
I'm,
honestly, with the pandemic, a lot of the job seekers I've been working with have been unemployed. And that unexpected layoff for them is emotionally taxing. But for the people who are employed, it's a different type of emotional taxing. I
yes.
mean, so often good people really care about how other people think about them, and to a certain extent that's great, right? You want to be an empathetic human being, and you want to treat other people how they want to be treated within the means of your boundaries.
Yes.
However, not leaving a toxic workplace, not leaving a job that no longer meets your needs, whether that be through fulfillment or financial means, whatever the case may be, it's doing a disservice to you. And so I really challenge anybody who's having those feelings to unpack that within yourself to figure out what is holding me back.
Yes.
Because if you are keeping yourself stuck, we need to talk to either one of us.
Yeah, talk to either one of us. And it's the reasons that people keep themselves stuck are super interesting. So sometimes it's because they don't know what they want to do. I work with a lot of people one-on-one that know that the time is winnowing down for their current job to be useful. And they are, oh, I love that statement from Tiffany, but they want to figure out how to thoughtfully move to their next role. So hire a coach, do the thing, figure it out over the course of several weeks or months. Yeah. Other times, the reason that people are having trouble is because they feel so responsible to the folks that they are serving. So there's a lot of teachers and nurses that really are burned out and they want to exit the field. Like they thought about it before the pandemic, and then whenever they had a pandemic to go with, it became clear that they needed to leave. But they're
think about how many teachers right now are in that position.
I know. I have talked to several. I have a couple of people that I've talked to that are teachers and are considering a move. But the thing is that they're not making the moves and they're feeling super stressed because they don't want to leave their students. They are afraid for who is going to take care of their students.
Yep.
The bottom line is that no one's going to take care of you. But if you're a teacher or a nurse looking to leave, at some point they will hire another teacher that will do their best to take care of those students, or another nurse that will do their best to take care of those patients. But no one else can take care of you and your kids and your spouse and your family besides you. So as far as quitting is concerned, like, wow, we're all over the place. Did we miss any logistical stuff? Because I know when you and I chatted yesterday, we said we wanted to talk about what to do right before you quit. We wanted to talk about what to do as you're quitting.
Okay, so things to do before you quit. We talked about, downloading your performance evaluation, getting a copy of your scope of work, those numbers. Yep. So often, especially people in sales, or any job really has a lot of numbers involved. Like how many of whatever you're doing, what was the cost of the projects, especially like my IT people who do a lot, like work on this project, then go to this project. What was the budget for this project? How long did it take you to get it done? How many people were you managing or collaborating with? Like all those things matter, and you think you're going to remember, but come on, let's face it, we're not. We're just not going to remember those details.
And that helps.
Be a giver.
What I was going to say is, whenever we be a giver, absolutely be a giver. Leave with as much kindness as you can muster, even if you have to grit your teeth to do it. And then when you switch gears to actually leaving, I cannot tell you how many times I have had impromptu coaching calls with people because they landed the job and suddenly they realized they have to go in on Monday morning and quit.
Yeah.
So, and the thing that I think led us to this conversation is I posted the text for your resignation letter. So
yes, for those of you watching, it's right here.
Dear person's name, hiring manager's name. I resign from company name effective X date to pursue other opportunities, period. Sincerely, your name. That is it. That is it for the resignation letter. And when people say, oh, but you need to tell them why and whatever. First off, you don't have to tell anybody anything that you don't want to and that your employment agreement doesn't say that you have to, which is usually nothing for most of the people I work with, but it could be something else.
Yeah, but some people are like non-competes and stuff like that.
Yes. So your letter of resignation is a formal document that goes in your file to let it be known that you chose to leave. That is all it's for.
Yeah.
The way I have done this in my career, and in tech, we tend to move around a lot. So I've quit a few times. Um, I will take that letter and I will schedule a meeting with my boss and I will have a conversation very briefly that says I'm leaving, that reflects that the decision is final, and then that I'll thank them and ask, what do you need before
Yeah.
I leave? And in some cases, I may have already thought through, here is what I think is the start of a transition or an offboarding plan. But of course, I am open to whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
But the thing that people do is they stress because they're trying to figure out how to write an eloquent letter that captures all of their gratitude. And the way that a letter is used, that's a no. It doesn't matter. That is the conversations you have with people on the way out the door. And so your work BFFs may have a happy hour and a party and a whatever, and you cry and sob and have margaritas and tell them how much you love each other. Your boss, you may just briefly say, thank you for the opportunity to stretch myself into XYZ roles. And that weird lady from the PMO that made your life hell because she was difficult to work with.
Deuces.
Exactly. Peace out. Peace out. Check SharePoint for my project information. So.
Yeah. So okay.
We make it too much. We make it as if it's an event, but we don't have to overthink it.
It can be really difficult to leave when you don't have another opportunity lined up.
Mm-hmm.
Or even when you do have another opportunity lined up, either way, what comes next, they may ask, just like, oh, like, what's happening, and when it comes down to your HR file, all they need is that you're resigning, because that way they don't have to pay you unemployment, and you check that HR box, right? And then I agree with having the personal conversations. Hey, like, I sent the email out as a formality, but definitely want to chat with you, you further about everything. Good bosses know it's coming.
Yeah,
If you've been having frequent one-on-ones where you're talking about your professional growth and development, and you've been actively working towards that next step in your career, and your employer cannot provide that to you, then they know it's coming. Or they should know it's coming, because you should love yourself enough to do what's best for you.
Yes, I love that you said that. Love yourself enough to leave when a job no longer serves you. And I really like the phrasing of a job no longer serves you, because I think it's clear, or it's becoming clearer to people in this age where diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are more important, whenever we are all reevaluating what's important in our life because the pandemic has made us do that. A lot of those things have made it clear that toxic is no longer okay. Like, we're done with toxic. And I'm seeing more and more people that are willing to leave without a job if they've been in a toxic spot, because they need to decompress so that their karma and their energy and their ability to pursue the next thing is on point.
Yeah.
But
and for some people, they financially have to stay in that bad situation.
Sometimes they do, but also Uber always wants more drivers. So but the thing about no longer serves you is that sometimes you can just be moderately okay in a job and like the people and be falling behind where you want to be long term.
Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to leave in those situations. If the people that you worked with, the friends that you're worried about leaving, are really your friends, they will be your friends after you go take a new job. And if not, they were acquaintances of convenience. They may be great colleagues in the future, but they're not your friends. And you should not put your own needs for growth and your family's needs for a secure future aside over acquaintances. One thing I wanted to touch on too about giving that notice, that we've said, okay, the letter is simple. The meeting with the boss is pretty simple. Usually we think about giving anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks notice. And in some countries, I know in a lot of Europe and in India, a lot of times the notice periods are longer.
Like 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. I have a cousin that's an MD, and For her job, it's like 3 to 6 months just because of the specialization. But regardless of what your notice period is, you need to be prepared to walk out the day that you give notice, because that could happen. Because different companies have different policies. And this is important. A lot of people say, oh, I'm sure I'll work out my notice, because they didn't walk Mary out when she quit 6 months ago. Number one, policies change. And number two, sometimes the policy around who has to leave that day and who gets to stay is different based on role, department, level, those types of things. So yeah, if Mary was a marketing coordinator and she worked out her notice, that is not the same as you, the database administrator, that is giving notice. You're much more likely to get walked out because of your access to data than a marketing coordinator. So
which is exactly why you want to do all of those things before you give the notice, or in some people's situations before you get let go.
And even though we're quitting gracefully, like a boss, with dignity and self-love, sometimes sometimes your boss is going to take it personally. You cannot control that. And if you've been kind, you should not worry about it. But if they get a wild hair and say, forget it, I don't need you, you're out, even if that's different than policy, usually they're allowed to do that. HR might tell them, because of how this went down, we have to pay out their notice. You know, there may be some financial things that are a little bit different in that scenario, but you always have to be prepared for that happening.
Because some people rely on that last paycheck, and oftentimes they don't get it, especially my people in sales. It's no, that's it. And then you waited to get.
We can't have you taking our clients.
But really, in between one role and the next role, so often people say, oh, I don't want to have a gap. So instead of taking a couple of weeks off, I'm going to jump right into the next role. If you are privileged enough to be in a situation where you can have a couple of weeks to go to your doctor's appointments, to organize your garage, to go on a vacation, whatever it is, to close one chapter, relax a little bit before starting the next one. I mean, take advantage of that.
I agree. And I got to tell you, now I want to organize my garage.
Don't. I know all the things on your plate. I know you not have time for that.
But let's talk about when it's okay to quit with no notice. Because, guys, I wouldn't do it a lot, but it is okay to quit with no notice in certain circumstances.
Okay, let me share a story.
Oh, go for it. I want to hear this. Let's do it.
My first job. So my stepdad's a farmer rep. And so he always used to, back in the day when you could, bribe doctors' offices, bringing them food and stuff, he used to always get platters from Jimmy John's, right?
Oh,
so he was like, okay, I show dogs, right? Like, you need a job. Like, this is expensive. So get a job. You're going to work at Jimmy John's. He walked me into Jimmy John's, talked to the owner, and then the next day I was hired. The owner of Jimmy John's son also works there, was under the influence of something and held a bread knife up to me while there was a line out the door of the Jimmy John's, just like completely wigged out on whatever he was on. It was nuts. And I still did not quit. And I had nightmares that like I was going to get killed at work because like the owner's son was so erratic with like the drug use. That is a perfect time to walk out with no notice.
That is
walk right out the door, say, F this, I am not having my life threatened, leave. But I was too submissive to do that. And looking back, I am so angry because F him and F his mom, for allowing someone who is struggling with substance abuse to put any of us in danger.
Yes. So
anytime you're in danger, walk out.
That's one of the wildest stories that I've ever heard. Good for a Friday before lunch. So here's where I think it's okay to quit. Number one, your physical safety is in danger.
Yeah.
It is okay to quit with no notice if your physical safety is in danger. If your physical health is in danger or your mental health is in danger. Now, I don't just mean like I'm feeling a little extra depressed today, so I'm going to quit with no notice. Like there's a little bit of subtlety to that. But if you have family members that did an intervention last night and they're like, you're so depressed, we're worried you're going to take your life and your job is part of it, like you can quit the next day with no notice. That's completely fine. The other thing I would say is if you are being pressured to do something that is unethical, that could result in prosecution or really big reputational harm or breaking codes of ethics where you would lose a license, you can quit the next day. And all these things that I told you, you don't need a job waiting for you 2 weeks from them. Those are things that you can quit right now today. Hopefully you have the financial means, like, of course, that's like a whole separate situation that you would need to think about that. But it is okay to quit in those situations. It is okay to quit with no notice in those situations. And it is okay to quit with no new job in those situations. Because realistically, people worry all the time, even especially people that don't have as many financial resources about doing that. But if the situation is that serious, you have a much higher likelihood of death, severe mental breakdown, or severe repercussions to your career if you stay in those 3 situations I described than if you leave and end up getting a couple months behind on your mortgage or having to take a weird job, driving Uber, doing the Home Depot, something that's not career related for a few months until you get your poop in a group. So,
and we're always told don't talk negatively about the employer in the interview.
For health reasons, I need to X, or this is not okay ethically. I am not going to do that. I resign. Those things are fine. And what does the letter say, Tegan? It says, I resign from Acme Corporation effective immediately, period, done. End of story. It doesn't have to be a big thing.
It's so often people are concerned about doing that because then what do they say in the next interview when they are trying to get a job, concerned for that. And it's all you have to say is, my values no longer aligned with policies. And so I'm looking for a company that's more aligned, which is why I'm being so thoughtful and came to your company. And so you can glaze over it and move on. But one thing you have to do is heal. Anytime you're leaving a job, you need to heal from it because it will continue to impact your career. The grudges that you learned from previous situations, don't bring that to the new job because you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And oftentimes things aren't done maliciously. They're done from lack of competency. Now, very often, if you're in a toxic workplace, things can potentially be malicious. But if you were intentional about the new place you are working at, then you were thoughtful about it. You probably aren't in that situation again. Go in with a clean slate and do things, to put your best foot forward. Because I've seen a lot of times new employees come in and just completely just throw all of their drama from the last company and maybe they didn't share about it in the interview, but then that's the only thing they're talking about in their first conversations as a new hire. And
that is such a good argument for don't have your last day be on a Friday and your first day be the next Monday. So that is one of the things, because even a week off doing nothing more exciting than cleaning out your garage, because now I really love that example. Even just that which for me, I find if I take a project and declutter and organize, it's actually healing on the inside. It's very good. It's like good.
Because you have control over it.
You have control over it and you're kind of getting rid of excess. And while you do that kind of thing, or you sit at the beach with your toes in the sand, or go to the baseball games, whatever it is that's your thing that you would do during some time off, you get to detox a little bit from that last thing. So another thing I would say, this can happen during your notice period or a little bit after, whatever you're more comfortable with. But a really tactical thing to do, especially with those former colleagues of the job you're leaving that you have a positive relationship with, is ask for a LinkedIn recommendation. And hell, you can even write the thing for them and tell them, tweak this to sound like you or add stuff. But, ask for a few LinkedIn recommendations while your results are still fresh in the mind of the people that you're working with. It is completely fine. And I've done this before, and I had one company where I had a boss say, well, I would love to do that, but I can't do it while I work here because the corporation has a policy that we are not allowed to do that. If that's the case, send those people to me and Tegan, because that is toxic, inappropriate, crappy behavior on the part of the company. But if you ask a few people for a reference or a LinkedIn recommendation, that's the best timing to do it. And if there are some people that you mostly liked working with, but it felt contentious at the end, just put something on your Google Calendar for 3 to 6 months out and then ask them. So, And that can be a good idea anyway, because it looks kind of weird sometimes on a LinkedIn profile if there was like no new recommendations for 5 years and then suddenly there's 10 new ones in the same 2 weeks.
Like, oh, that person's getting ready to leave.
Oh yeah, they're getting ready to leave.
You know how it works.
What was the deal? What was going on? It feels contrived. So if you pick 2 or 3, ask them immediately, and then wait another 3 to 6 months and pick another couple, and then wait another 3 to 6 months and pick another couple, you'll have like an amazing complement of recommendations available to you because you were proactive and thought about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I love this suggestion from Linda. She said leave midweek and resume midweek if possible. So yeah, even if all you do is make your last day a Wednesday, even if your next company says, hey, we start all our, orientation on Mondays, you still have 5 days. You're not trying to, switch things, do all the laundry, do all the weekend stuff, and start a new job. That's great. So.
Yeah, awesome recommendation, Linda. All right. I know we've taken up a little bit more time than we had originally planned, but that's okay. I could talk to you all day long. So for those of you who are not already following this No BS coach, go ahead. The hyperlink is there. I can put it in the comments later. And if you were let go, if you didn't have to quit, all these tips still count. If there's somebody who's still at the organization who can, kind of look things up for you, confirm certain dates, confirm certain metrics and things like that, reach out to them. Hey, one of my favorite coworkers. Hey, Moss, I remember that project we worked on, and I was just thinking about who was it that did this, or what was it that was this? If you had good working relationships with some of your peers, at least a couple of your peers, and if they're still there, even if they're not there, chances are they might remember something that you're not. And you want to be able to confirm everything. You want to be able to validate everything that you're articulating to an employer. So if this employer says, okay, you worked on an $82 million project, who can vouch for that? Oh, I worked on that with Moss. Let me go ahead and give you his phone number. I can use him as a reference about my work on this project. And then boom, there you have it. His story and your story are lining up. So there's some synergy there, because the last thing you want to do is to not quantify anything simply because you can't remember, because that's huge in your job search, is to be able to articulate your full scope. And your full scope doesn't read like a job description. It reads like a performance evaluation. And that's a huge thing, whether you're quitting or getting fired, that you need to take with you. So that way you can set yourself up for success. I've got clients who are making pivots, and what they did 10 years ago is now all of a sudden relevant. They don't remember that stuff. And so do yourself the favor and be proactive about this.
I've got another comment about that too. So one of the things that this happens sometimes to contractors. So what'll happen is you're a contract developer or something like that. You're on a project. It's a very exciting project that is going to have big impact. But towards the end, sometimes they wind the staff down, and they will let go of a few of the contractors, and then they'll keep the full-timers or people to do like a maintenance mode or the next round. That feels gross when you're the person whose contract ended before the project was done.
Yeah.
But what I advise in that situation, no matter whether you're a contractor, consultant, full-time employee, is check back with somebody from that project team a few months after the project goes live and find out how did it go. Because when you're cut off, when you're, that business analyst that leads the project, 4 weeks before it's actually done, you feel like you can't say what the result was because you weren't there for it. And if you go find out what it was and you worked 98% of the project, it is okay to say, I did the project and the result of the project was X. Now, if you're on your resume, if you're in an interview, you can say, hey, they wound down, I rolled off that project, but I checked back later and my work contributed to 25% higher revenue or whatever. That is a really great way to, number one, have an excuse to keep in contact with your former colleagues because, I just want to check back. How did that project go? And number two, to take your resume from something that might have felt like just a list of tasks you did to carrying it forward into that performance review style or that why did it matter? I like to say instead of scope, why the hell did it matter that you were on that project? Like, how did you move the needle? How did that project move the needle? So hopefully that makes sense to some people.
It does. And I just realized that I accidentally streamed on my Facebook account too, not just on my
fantastic.
business page.
I'll have some Facebook friends.
So, hey, Mom, I hope you're having fun in Hawaii for your birthday. Okay, but all right. Before we get carried away talking about anything else, I mean, we can always come back on. I am going to get you to start doing lives yourself because if I could go from being petrified to just being like, let's do it. You can too.
I will soon. I did one with Sonal Ball a few months ago about assessments. Like, go check out Sonal's YouTube. We did.
Oh my God, she's such a badass.
100,000
subscribers. I'm so proud of her.
She's amazing. She makes my heart go pitter pat. But we talked about how personality assessments should and should not be used in your job search. So go check out Sonal's channel and find that interview. I'll be doing it. I promised her that when I went live, she would be my first one.
Yes.
So I got a lot of projects.
She was my first guest.
What'd you say?
She was my first guest.
Oh, cool.
I had like a panel. Okay. All right. Best job search advice for 2022. And then everybody else, I'll see you next weekend with my husband to talk about white glove recruitment services. Ooh. How to tell the difference between a good recruiter, a shitty recruiter, and if you are a shitty recruiter, how to become a better recruiter. But in the meantime, let's close this out.
So my best advice is what you want matters more than what you are told people want. So what you want matters the most. If everyone's saying you should go be a data scientist because data science is really hot and you don't want to be a damn data scientist, don't do it. If people are telling you you should go get a PMP because you were a project manager and you should want to do that, but you're wanting to pivot or you don't find it important, don't invest your time on that. If you want to work at a small company and everybody else thinks you should be trying to work at a FANG company, go work at a small company. What you want matters more than what other people think you should do.
I love it, love it, love it, love it. And on that note, happy Good Friday, everyone.
Yes.
What you want matters. See you guys next week.